Thanks. I haven't done anything yet. Hello, my name's Rebecca Folland. I'm the Group Rights and Audio Director here at Hachette. And I think this panel's going to teach you some bits about parts of the business you may not know about. And with me I have Caitriona Rowe, who's Head of Sales for Little Brown, Saffron Stocker, who's Deputy Art Director for Hodder, and Melis, Dagoglu, who is Rights Director for Hodder as well. So probably the best place to start is for me to let them introduce themselves and tell them you a little bit about what their jobs involve. So, Caitriona.
Hello, everybody. So in sales, the best way to think about it is that we represent the books to the customers. So I'm talking about retailers rather than end readers. So there are, I don't know, several hundred of us here at Hachette, and some of us will be visiting independent bookshops in a car with a bag full of proofs. Others will be talking to Amazon about stock availability, and others will be all over the world. We have a particularly big team in Australia and New Zealand who talk to the booksellers there. But internally as well, what sales do is we represent the retailers to the publishers. So when we're having conversations with editors about how to publish a book, things like the design, when we should publish it, the price, the format, all of that, what we're thinking about is not what we would like personally. As a reader, we're thinking about what would my customer say, what is the best thing for all these different retailers. And that can really vary by genre and format. That enough?
Yeah. Thanks, Caitriona. Saffron.
Hello. So in my role in the art department, I head up our art department, which is made up of around 7 designers at any one time. We are responsible for the cover, but not only that, the spine, the back, all the finishes, like all the foils and glossy bits, and any end papers and things like that. Our job starts out with a brief from the editor, and that brief covers key pieces of information like what's the mood of the book, is it funny, hopeful, dark, scary, etc. And then who the audience might be for this book, what books have they just read, what TV are they watching, what films do they like. So we try and keep it broader than just their book world, it's their whole world. And then also what the key retailers might be for that particular title, whether it's more online or supermarkets or high street, all those sorts of things will go to inform the design work that we do on the book. And then we work with a range of designers or photographers or picture editors, illustrators, artists of all sorts, to bring together some visuals that we think answers the brief and encapsulates all of those pieces of information.
Thank you, Saffron. Melis.
So I have the wonderful job of trying to find international publishers for our authors. When we buy a book from an author or agent, we're essentially buying like a bundle of rights. And sometimes in that bundle will be US and or translation rights. And my team's role is to try to find a dedicated US publisher who's going to publish it in the North America and really, be the champion for your book there. But we'll also try to find a German publisher who'll translate and then do the same, market it, try to get reviews, etc. in their market, and the same in Italy, France, the whole world, hopefully. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So when a book is submitted to an editor, they will often come to us and say, I love this book, do you think this has any international potential? And so I'll speak with my team, and we'll hopefully have a very good idea of exactly what will work well in Germany and in China, etc. And that obviously requires having that knowledge. We speak to publishers around the world throughout the year. We're constantly in communication with them. And hopefully it does, and then we'll buy World All Languages in that book. And then the next step is for us to submit that book to publishers, and hopefully someone will make an offer, we'll negotiate, and then it's our job to just keep them updated with all other rights sales or other news that are happening. So that's us in rights.
Thanks, Melis. And I thought we'd talk a bit about trends now and how they influence the jobs you do. And I wonder if I can go back to Saffron to start with this, because you talk quite interestingly about how you look at the wider landscape of TV and what the consumers are doing as well.
Yeah, I think we're so blessed at this point to have so many resources to draw on for inspiration and for the trends. And I think our job is always a really sort of tricky balance of being really aware of those trends, of leaning into them, but also evolving things and pushing it forward and always being creative and making sure we're not just sort of creating something that looks exactly like something else that's out there. So it's a real balance, and that differs between different types of books as well, how much we want to lean into the trends so that somebody really, really knows, oh, I liked this book, so I'm definitely going to like this book because it feels similar. There's some sort of visual cue that links them together. Or whether it's something that's completely groundbreaking, that pushes way beyond, and we want to do something really new and lead the market with that. So I think for us it's a really interesting thing of just kind of balancing those two things.
Thank you. And Caitriona, obviously you're working quite closely with the design team around this time as well. So how often are you thinking about trends and trying to preempt them, get ahead of them generally in sales?
It's a really interesting one. So I've been in the business more than 20 years, a very long time. I can remember a lot of trends. Look, I remember the days of like Misery Memoir and adult colouring and all the Dan Brown rip-offs. And so we're all very conscious that they have that sort of shape, right? So at the moment, I think we're somewhere here with romantasy at the top of the peak, probably. But the problem with publishing isn't it, that we have quite a long life cycle. So when you sell your book, it's usually at least a year before you see a finished copy. And so when we're acquiring books, we're thinking about what's going to be happening in the market in a year, 2 years' time. So if you follow trends too much, you can end up publishing at the wrong time. So we're always looking for the next thing, the new thing, like you say, because we're very aware that if we just bought a lot of romantasy now and kept publishing for the next 5 years, we'll be in trouble. So yeah, it's a balancing act as well between knowing what the trends are, responding to them as quickly as you can, and always looking ahead as well. And I would just say, like, the most important thing isn't really anything to do with trends. It's how good is that book and will people want to read it? So please, when you're thinking of ideas for your next projects, don't be too swayed by trends, I would say. If you write a good book, somebody will want to publish it, regardless of what's happening in the market.
Thanks, Caitriona. And Melis, you're working with lots of different places around the world, and so the trend question must be even more complicated. How does it work?
Yeah, but I agree a lot with what you said, Caitriona. It's and don't get too wrapped up in trends because trends come and go. But I would say that the translation publishers especially look a lot to the UK and to the US to really lead that conversation and what's working and in the trends and so on. So, for example, to take your example, the romantasy, it's a dark romance, that really took off in the English language markets. And so translation publishers were kind of jumping on that and making sure that they could buy those rights and buy those books and so on. And they also have the added complication that they're having to compete with the English language editions because so many readers now in that area read English language. So they're very much looking to us to see what's working. And similarly, I remember the psychological suspense. Like, we did not want to see another psych suspense for no one wanted to see anything. And then after a few years, the Frida McFadden success has come, and so now all of a sudden publishers are kind of looking for something similar to be able to do, to jump on that as well. But we go to book fairs and we're meeting publishers, and so we're also asking them what they're looking for and what's working for them, because we report back to UK editors. And something that we always hear is a sweeping love story. So in Germany, that's always high up on their wish list, and that's a really big market for us, and we can do some pretty good big deals there. So it is something that editors will listen to. So I'll say, if you have something in your inbox that looks like it could be that, you put it at the top of your reading list, and you make sure you keep me involved so we can swoop in there and get and buy the book. So it's definitely a conversation, and it's I think if a book is really good, that's always going to do well.
Thank you. And some specific questions for each of you now. Caitriona, I think you all had a marketing and publicity session before this, didn't you? Yeah. So I was going to ask, in what way do marketing, publicity, and rights affect your sales strategy?
They're really, really important. So, first of all, from a really pragmatic point of view, if Melis has sold the North American rights to something, that means it's being published in that market and we can't sell our edition there. So our North American sales team will stand down and we'll let the publisher locally take over. On the other hand, if something is selling in loads of different languages, that's a really good sign for us. It shows there's interest out there. It shows people want the book nice and early, because this is happening again probably a year before the book is published. And so anything that shows excitement and interest, so lots of rights deals, early reviews from other authors, interest in TV or film rights being sold, all of that shows us that there's people want the book. And we use that when we're talking to retailers, and we'll obviously, when we're pitching the book, we'll tell them all of this stuff. And the more that's happening, the more buzz there is, the more likely it is that actual readers, human beings outside the business, are going to be interested too. So we use that as a sort of flag, really, for our customers. Yeah, and we work super closely with marketing and publicity in particular. Right from the beginning, from the point of acquisition, we're talking about who the reader is, how to reach them, the copy on the back, like what words we should use, all of that. We're involved in that as well, and it's a really exciting part of the publishing process.
Thank you. I want to know the answer to this question, actually. How do you decide sales targets for particular titles? We know how we do it in rights. I'm just wondering how you go about it.
First of all, it's different for every salesperson, I would say. So, like, I can't speak for all of my colleagues, but I have worked at a small, a medium, and a large publisher, so I've got a bit of overview. I mean, generally speaking, there are two sides. So the first is using cold hard fact sales data. So you'll look at historical numbers, either for the author, if they've written before, you look at what they've sold in the past, and that's your building block. If it's a complete debut, we will find other books that are a bit similar, so whether they're writing on the same topic in the same area. Some publishers have a kind of flat number that they use for all debut novels because, you know, who knows? we're fortune telling. It's a nice part of the job. I do enjoy it. So anyway, you get your kind of starting figure of numbers, and then it's about engaging with the book itself and having a lot of conversations. So we have acquisition meetings where there's, I don't know, maybe 20 people, and everyone's read the material. Everyone feeds in their thoughts on who the reader is, the sort of scale of the potential, when is the best time to publish it, what it should look like, what price it should be. And that always starts with the publisher, with the editor, the commissioning editor. And we will take their vision and ambition and add it to our kind of building blocks of our previous numbers and mix it all up in a pot. And a number pops out.
Which neatly leads me to my next question, which is about different formats and genres. Obviously, everyone's talking about audio a lot at the moment, but how do you adapt your sales approach? How you sell these books in different format?
Well, it's really very different with something like an audio or an ebook. So a digital edition, you don't really have to pitch it because those books just feed out to all their customers automatically. You know, they just appear on Amazon. So it's more about pitching for price promotions and making sure that customers know about publicity, because that is what drives online sales a lot of the time, is people either hearing about it through word of mouth or reading reviews, seeing something on social media. Physical books, so hardbacks and paperbacks, particularly at the more literary end of the market, is a more kind of old-fashioned way of selling. So you're literally going to a bookseller and saying, please read this, I think it's great, I think your customers will like it, and hoping that they enjoy it and hand sell. So there's huge variety depending on your customer, genre and format. There are other practical considerations. So for example, the hardback is a very rare beast. It only really exists here in the UK and in North America. Every other territory in the world sells trade paperbacks first format. So my international colleagues don't sell hardbacks. They have a special kind of massive paperback of their own, the same size as the hardback, but soft cover. And then other little practical things, like some customers' shelves are a particular size and they can't take books that are bigger than the shelves. And like, so we need to have you need to have quite a practical head on you to be a salesperson, because you're thinking about like how many books fit on a crate and that kind of thing.
Thank you, Caitriona. Saffron, this is probably a really interesting question for everyone in the room. How involved is an author usually in the design of their cover and the process?
I think it's something that's really evolved recently or in recent years, but I think at the beginning point, it will be between the author and the editor, who will have this really close kind of dialogue about the book, and then it's for the editor to interpret that and put that all in the brief for us and talk to us about that. But then further down the line, obviously, once we're sort of happy with visuals in-house and we think we've brought our expert knowledge to that and we've done the book justice, then that gets shared with the author for their input. But we also have various kind of imprints that we work with in various different genres, some of which where the authors have huge wealths of knowledge of their kind of consumers and their readers, which we take advantage of and chat to them about that. Sometimes if it's going to be like an illustrated fantasy cover, we'll send the author some illustration options of artists that we think could work with us. So it sort of varies on a case-by-case basis. But the author involvement for a lot of titles comes a bit further down the line when we've got something together that we think responds to the brief really well. But that's not to say that's the case for every single book. There might be mood boards and illustrator options and things earlier on in the process that we will have the author look at as well.
Thank you. And going back to how you work with Caitriona a bit here, when you're designing the cover, how much are you thinking about different retailers, different places where the book might be sold, independent bookshops or supermarkets or Amazon or wherever?
I think a huge amount. I think, again, as I said, like part of the brief is about where we're looking to sell most copies of this book. So if it's online, we think about things like how the thumbnail online will look and making sure it's as punchy and recognizable and readable as possible at that smaller size. If it's for supermarkets, again, you're sort of looking at a very rushed purchase potentially. You're doing your food shop and you grab a book that you think you might enjoy. So again, we're looking for that real immediacy. If it's more of a sort of high street bookshop independence, we're thinking about people picking that book up physically and the finishes and what that experience feels like. So I think all of that really, really feeds into what design decisions we're making right from the very beginning.
Great, thank you. And Melis, this might be a bit people are less familiar with, but when do the rights team get involved and how closely do you work with the other departments?
Well, ideally, we get involved right from the start. So, as I said earlier, the editor hopefully has shared the book with us, and we're super excited. And we'll be, we can be really instrumental in kind of our enthusiasm in getting other departments excited and being like, we can sell this everywhere. Let's buy this. So hopefully, the editor has gotten in touch with us early on, and once we do, if we have bought the book, we've been successful in buying the book, we will continue to work very closely with the editor. We'll talk about timing, about when to send it out internationally. Do we want to kind of take advantage of the UK buzz? We've just, it's just sold in the UK and send it out. Sometimes the editor and author might feel like, well, we want to work on, it needs a bit of work, let's wait a little bit. And we might want to wait before a book fair as well, because that can be a really good time to send out something exciting. It really helps create that buzz. But we also work very closely with the other different departments. For example, with an amazing cover. When we're at a book fair, we've got a rights guide, and so we've got kind of a book on each page. And when we're talking with the publisher, they're being pitched like hundreds and hundreds of books by rights agents, agencies and publishers and so on. So we really need to make sure that our pitch stands out, and sometimes a great cover can really help with that, because it can really, take their eye and be like, yes, that amazing cover that I saw, and that fabulous rights person that was pitching it. So that's super helpful. And I mean, it's also, they don't always use that cover, because every market will have maybe a different kind of idea thing that will work for them, but it just helps kind of doing that pitch. With the sales departments and publicity, you know, every review, all the marketing ideas, like we use all of that when we're trying to get, you know, publishers on board to show that this is, you know, this has a lot of commercial value here and it could do in your market as well. So, you know, we're also constantly having to, you know, we might be really lucky that we send out a book and lots of publishers buy it at once, but often we are sending it once. We're then sending them a little reminder about, oh, look at this amazing review that's just come in. And, you know, it's sometimes a lot of work. And I think, you know, those deals, when they do come in, that they're so satisfying because you've really worked hard to get that deal. And also it feels like such a collaborative moment because those sales figures and that Waterstones, you know, shortlisting or the amazing cover, like that has helped us really kind of convince the publisher that, yes, I want to buy this book. So it's, yeah.
You sort of answered this for me as well. I think I was going to ask what impact prizes or sales here have on rights, but you sort of touched on that as well.
Yeah.
So if something's a bestseller here, that obviously helps you.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, you know, we're, it's our job is to, you know, sometimes it's a slam dunk when it's a really great book and if everything aligns, but yeah, other times it's that, it's a slower burn and those reviews, etc. And it's also worth remembering that for a translation publisher, you know, that's a big commitment for them. They're buying the rights to a book, which they then have to translate, and that's costs a lot of money. They won't, you know, they don't have the author locally to promote, and so, you know, for them it's a big leap of faith. And so for us, you know, all of those amazing successful things that we're doing here is super helpful. And especially, I think, with the prizes, I think with literary novels, I think that's really key when it comes to translation deals, because that really is the thing that will make publishers, you know, sit up and pay attention.
Thank you. Okay, panel. I'm going to finish with one thing. There's probably lots of things, but one thing you love about your job. So I'm going to start with Saffron. She's in the middle.
Oh, hello. So I couldn't narrow it down to one thing. I have two. One is the moment you get the email through with the author feedback saying that you've nailed it, the cover is exactly everything they'd hoped for and more, and the excitement that brings feels really amazing. And it's such a nice sort of collaborative effort between all the teams that work on the book to come to that point. And then the second is seeing it in bookshops and seeing the physical thing. I still, 17 years in, get like the biggest thrill to see things on the shelf that I've worked on and bore everybody that I'm with I worked on that one. So that, yeah, the fact that we're making something physical that you can go and see in a shop is really special too.
Caitriona.
Well, I think the lovely thing about sales is the huge variety, because we get to work on every book that's published by the publisher we're with, which means that you're really good at general knowledge, and it's excellent for pub quizzes, because I know like a little bit about loads of things. And more seriously as well, like you have to be a bit of a sort of BBC journalist when you're a salesperson, because it's not about your personal taste. You have to kind of represent books that are for people who are really different to you, and that, I think that's a really good exercise to keep a nice open mind and not get too stuck in your little bubble. So yeah, the variety is definitely mine.
Melis.
I think for me the best part is being able to talk about books with other book lovers, and we get to do that, all the time, but especially at book fairs. It's such a thrill as well when you've just pitched a book to a publisher, an international publisher, and they're like, yes, I love it, and takes the book, if we have the physical copy, and like takes it with them. And that is a big commitment, because they're putting that in their suitcase and having to bring that back. I'm falling apart. I'm sorry. I'm getting too excited talking about how much I love my job. And it's just that thrill of knowing that I have this small part in kind of bringing stories to readers around the world is wonderful.
Thank you, amazing panel. I think we've got time for questions now. I think there's some roving mics. over there.
Hi. Hopefully this is the right question for this group. Maybe controversial, but
Okay,
I
we'll
think
brace
I think we
ourselves.
can all agree that Amazon is evil, and but you have to, you have to make money, and I think we're all artists, and so it's this strange dichotomy. But you're going to small, mom and pop bookshops, and then you have bookshop.org, you have Amazon, you have all these different players of, I just am so curious when you go to like that indie mom and pop place with this book, but then it's really being pushed on Amazon, and kind of like, what is that of, I don't know, where my question is kind of in there of like, what is that? Where like we're selling on Amazon, but then you want to support, I want to support Alistair, my local bookseller in Dulwich, I wouldn't want to tell readers to go to Amazon, but then that's numbers, and then that's money, and then I think us as writers are like, this is all, but then I wonder how you all feel of just supporting, the numbers of that and everything.
I'm going to look at Caitriona because you said
Okay.
Amazon.
Shall I take this one?
Yeah.
The way we look at it is that publishing is an ecosystem, right? And some people live in places where there are no bookshops, right? And for them, Amazon is an absolute lifesaver. So we wouldn't be without it for that reason. The other surprising thing is that the indie bookshop trade is absolutely thriving at the moment. There are new shops opening every year. It's very, very buoyant. Waterstones are also having a record year, and they're opening new shops every year. And since James Dawn took over, however long ago it is, about 6 years or so, every single year they've been more profitable and more successful. So bookshops are booming at the same time as Amazon, and that's great. And part of the reason is that since Amazon launched, the bookshops that have survived are the ones that adapted, and so they've made themselves lovely places to be, like real kind of community centres. There are more events now than there ever have been. I think they've upped their game when it comes to recommendation and hand selling, and all those are things that Amazon can't do. So, Amazon's great if you want something quickly and you know what you want, but if you want to just like some advice on a present for your niece or something, you cannot get that from an online bookshop. And so that is why indies are doing so well. And, touch wood, the balance is working at the moment, and the industry is in good shape. So I think when Amazon started out, we were all quite scared about what it would do to our business. But so far, everything's working in sort of harmony. We all agree to disagree on some issues and try and keep all of our customers as happy as we can. Yeah.
Anyone else on the panel want to add to that? I think that's a pretty comprehensive answer. Any other? Just here on the right and then here at the front.
Thank you. I had a question about like rights in different markets. So like in Africa and like the Middle East, and just how you go about ascertaining whether a book has potential to be sold in those markets, and what the process of like pitching looks like.
That's for you, Melis.
So we do work with, so in the Arabic, in the Middle, we do work with Arabic publishers, and in Africa, I mean, there are also, of course, publishers there, and they will reach out to us if there is a specific book that they feel like could work in publishing in their own language. But generally, I think it's it's mostly English language the English language books that do, and then we distribute there. If I'm right, that's looking at Rebecca.
Yeah, there's always two things going on for rights. There is the English language editions, and there are the translated editions. And we have an international team here and a rights team, and both are thriving and selling books all over the place. And I think our aim is to make sure that we get books into the hands of people who want to read them in the format and the way they want to read them. But in terms of assessing books for rights, that's Melis's sort of day job, and knowing what different publishers in different countries want, and that comes from meeting them. And
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm trying to think of the last book that we've sold. But yeah, it's not been too many recently. But yeah, we usually probably work a little bit more reactively there.
And there was a question here. Sorry, has that answered your question? Yeah, it has. And in the red jumper, I think. Is that right? Yeah.
So I have a slightly related question, and it's just one of these out of interest questions. Kind of both in terms of fiction in translation and selling in other English-speaking areas, what kind of particular challenges do you have if a book is written in a strong regional dialect?
So I think there are sometimes challenges, I would say, for publishers in translation, because they're obviously trying to, it's quite difficult to translate that and to get the feeling and everything correctly. So sometimes we are a little bit more cautious, but then just as we say to someone, this is going to be really difficult for us to sell, an amazing book comes along and all of a sudden publishers buy it and love it, and they find work around it. So it's one of those things where we're constantly telling editors one thing, and then an exception will happen, and it apparently it doesn't matter. Those times that they told me at the last meeting. So it's really it can be, and I think it's definitely something that a publisher will mention as a challenge, but it's not impossible because we've seen it happen. Yeah.
Any other questions? Over here.
Hi. What are the best book covers? I mean, like, how do you know that your cover has made a difference and that it is selling the best because of the cover?
First of all, great question. I'm definitely not stalling for time. I always think that you can tell that you've done a really successful cover when other people start copying that cover. When it starts popping up as a comp on all the briefs, and then when you see other covers out there, you think, oh, that's been pretty inspired by what we've... And it's that thing I was saying, is that balance between giving people enough signifiers that they know what genre it is, what it's about, whether it's a romance, whether it's, funny, dark, but evolving that and pushing it forward so that you're standing out in the market. You kind of want to be the one that the eye is drawn to. So I would say probably something that would be a key indicator of success in that is that you would start getting copycats from other authors and other publishers.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. It's coming down the aisle to you. Sorry.
Thanks, Louise. On the back of that question, I just wondered what's been the most challenging title that you've had to design a book cover for?
Well, I think there are many things that make it challenging. I think it's two sides of the same coin. It's challenging and really enjoyable when somebody has come up with something that feels really fresh and new. So you're not drawing on all of that market knowledge and all of the things that went before, and somebody has come up with something that feels so fresh and so different. But it's how you, again, bring the right readers along with you, but also signify that this thing is so exciting and so fresh and so different than anything else out there. So I think it's a challenge and an enjoyable
She's
one.
not going to give you a book title. No, she's done really well. Any other questions? Okay, in that case, I've got some key messages I've been instructed to give you. If you want some snacks and drinks, they're outside. If you want a tour of the building, you can gather outside the lifts in the auditorium down there and you'll get a tour of the building. That's exciting. Thank you. Thanks to the panelists. Forgot that bit.